Hello, I'm Dawn Eden Goldstein. You're watching episode 2 of Lifting the Veil on Annulments. As I said in episode 1, I'm a canon lawyer on a Catholic diocesan tribunal. I mentioned in that first episode that there would be future episodes if I could get permission from my superior to continue this series. I'm very happy to let you know that I have received permission. This permission does not constitute a blanket approval of everything that I say in this series, but it's a recognition that I am seeking to provide a service to the public in my private capacity as a licensed canonist. I should also add for those who are watching that in doing this, I'm not soliciting business as a private canon lawyer. I actually don't have time to do it privately right now, but I'm doing this because I believe, from what I've seen, that the procedure that a person has to go through to obtain an annulment of their previous marriage after having received a civil divorce, this procedure of obtaining an annulment in the Catholic Church is too darn opaque. We need transparency so that someone who is seeking an annulment will understand how it's done, so it's not such a mystery anymore. So just to recap the two main points of episode 1, first I talked about how it's not who you know, it's what you know. Some people think that getting an annulment is all about connections, it's all about how much you donate to your diocese, or how much you can persuade your pastor or the bishop or someone that you're a good Catholic and you deserve this annulment. As I explained, annulments are based on the truth of your previous union, your previous, what we would call a putative marriage, meaning that it is a marriage until it's proven not to be a marriage. So the annulment is based on the facts of that. And more specifically, the annulment is based on how well you can prove that your marriage was invalid. And this goes to the second point of the previous video, which is that you prove that your marriage was invalid based on the grounds on which you are arguing that it's invalid. And as I said in that previous video, these grounds are not based on why the marriage ended. It could have ended for any one of a number of reasons that might not be canonical. The canonical grounds are based on something that was a flaw in the way the marriage was made. So the grounds all look to the very beginning of the marriage to find out, was there an error in the beginning? St. Thomas Aquinas, not speaking of marriage specifically, but speaking of things in general, I believe it's Aquinas who said or repeated the saying that a little flaw at the beginning can grow into a big flaw at the end if it's not corrected. And certainly that's the truth with marriages, where there is a flaw at the beginning. So in the previous episode, I said that today we would start to go into the grounds for nullity because when you file your application, or as it's normally understood in canon law, not every diocese in the United States uses this word, but normally you would be filing a libellus. However you are filing for your annulment, you will be asked to identify the grounds on which your marriage was null. And as I said before, I'm going to be going by mostly the list of grounds for nullity as it's articulated by the Diocese of Madison. As I said before, the grounds are the same no matter where you are in the Catholic Church. There are only certain grounds for nullity, but the Diocese of Madison lists those grounds in a particularly helpful way. So I'm linking to their grounds list in the description for this video. But if you are unable to see the description of this video, you can just put into a search engine Diocese of Madison grounds nullity, and you'll see what I'm reading from. At some point, perhaps not in this video, I'll be also using the Diocese of Cleveland's grounds list, because there are certain things on their list that I think are a little better stated than those on the list given by the Diocese of Madison. But right now I'm going to read from the beginning of the Diocese of Madison's explanations of the grounds of nullity, and they write, "By petitioning for a declaration of nullity, you are making an accusation that your marriage was invalid due to some serious factor that was already present on the day you exchanged marital consent. Therefore, you must indicate the basis for your petition, that is, the ground or grounds of nullity on which the validity of the marriage is being challenged." And it goes on to say, only 3 kinds of defects can cause a marriage to be invalid, and each of these can be further classified into several distinct grounds. A marriage can only be made invalid by number 1, defective consent; number 2, the presence of an impediment that made one or both of the parties legally unqualified for marriage; or number 3, a defect in the legal form in which the marriage was celebrated. So the Diocese of Madison begins by listing the grounds that refer to psychological defects of consent. And as they write, consent is what makes a marriage, and all adults are presumed capable of consenting to marriage. It is possible, however, that this basic capacity can be disrupted by a serious psychological disorder or anomaly at the time of the wedding, rendering the person incapable of consenting to marriage validly. So the first canonical ground that this Diocese of Madison grounds list addresses is lack of sufficient use of reason. Canon 1095, paragraph 1. And they ask, what is it? It's a person who, it happens when a person who suffers from a permanent or temporary lack of the use of reason due to a severe disability, mental illness, psychological disturbance, or extreme intoxication at the time of the celebration of marriage. This person is not able to give valid consent to marriage. And it gives a couple of examples that I'll let you read. I'll just say that the example that I recall discussed in class when I was taking my courses at the Catholic University of America, Father John Beale discussed the Britney Spears case. I don't believe, I could be wrong about this, but I don't believe that Britney Spears' case was actually adjudged in a Catholic tribunal, but the grounds on which Britney Spears sought I believe, civil annulment of her first marriage was that she and her spouse got married in Vegas one night when they were both just bombed out of their minds on something or other, alcohol and maybe other things, I don't know. But that would be probably the most common instance in which lack of sufficient use of reason would come into play. And as the Diocese of Madison goes on to say, what is it not? And the Diocese of Madison writes, a person who does not lack the use of reason at the time of the celebration of marriage, even if that person was on medication, consumed alcohol, or suffered from a psychological problem, does not attempt marriage invalidly on this ground. And so they basically say, for example, these are my words, but if somebody is just buzzed on alcohol but can still think fairly clearly, then that ground of Canon 1095, paragraph 1, doesn't apply. Likewise, if somebody's just taking an anti-anxiety medication. So now let's move on to the second psychological defect of consent. This is grave defect of discretion of judgment regarding the essential rights and duties of marriage. And that's Canon 1095, paragraph 2. And this is actually where I disagree somewhat with the wording of the Diocese of Madison. I think they're too strict on this, and I don't think they're going by the latest guidance on this that comes from the Vatican in the document Dignitas Connubii. So I'm going to refer more to the Diocese of Cleveland's grounds for nullity, where they describe this ground, Canon 1095, paragraph 2, and they explain, to marry, a person must not be affected by psychological or emotional problems which prevent him or her from understanding the marriage he or she is about to enter. Now, this ground of Canon 1095, paragraph 2 is so important, and it comes into play so often in nullity cases that I'm actually going to split it up to carry it over into the next episode. In this episode, I just want to emphasize that although you may have heard that people argue that that their marriage was not valid because they and their spouse, or they or their spouse, were immature, and this canon, grave defect of discretion of judgment or lack of due discretion, this can refer to immaturity. Yet, very often when people try to argue that they were immature at the time of the marriage, it's not necessarily, they're not necessarily able to prove that their marriage was invalid on that ground, because simple immaturity does not necessarily mean that your marriage was invalid, because people can be immature and yet have a pretty clear idea of what marriage is, and have a pretty clear idea that this person they're marrying is a good person to marry. I think of an aunt and uncle that I have who met when my aunt was just 15. My uncle wasn't that much older, and they were the first people that each other had dated seriously. And they, married a few years after meeting by the time my aunt was of age, and they're still married well over 60 years later. So immature people can still marry and marry validly. There has to be something a bit more to that, unless we're talking about people who really only have the sense of maturity of a child, in which case that would be more like Canon 1095-1 that we just discussed. So I'm going to hit pause right now, and we will take up Canon 1095-2 in the next episode. In the meantime, if you wish to leave a question in the comments, just please be aware that the comments are public. Don't leave anything that you wouldn't want attached to your name in public. Also, I may or may not answer every question. I don't necessarily have time to answer each question. But you can certainly try leaving a question, and if I have the time, and if I think it's a question that's something that would be important for others to read, I may answer it. Also, I just want to thank those who left positive comments for my previous episode. The positive comments are a great encouragement to me, because I'm just doing this in my spare time because I think it's important. I think it's helpful to people. So positive comments help fuel my own interest in keeping this going. So thank you for watching. Lord willing, see you next time, and God bless you.